If you've ever felt stuck, unhappy at work, burned out, and undervalued despite your many achievements, you got the degrees, the certifications, the high profile titles at work, and yet happiness still eludes you. Believe me, you are not alone. Your girl has been there more times than I'd like to admit, but today's episode is your wake up call. While it may seem easy to blame your job, your workload, coworkers, friends, family, and all the things for your unhappiness, the real issue might be a little deeper than that. So today we are going to explore signs that you may be tying your self-worth to your job title and how to break free from this mindset. And your girl is also going to share her personal journey of when I realized that I was lashing out at the wrong people, places, and things, and how I started the process of being more intentional about creating a much more fulfilling life. What's good, party people? It's your girl, Candia, your personal hype woman on a mission to help you show up and speak up anyway, despite dealing with fear, uncertainty, or self-doubt. Let's kick this conversation off talking about what is self-worth. For me, self-worth is about embracing your unique qualities, passions, and strengths, regardless of what you do for a living. It isn't about your job title, achievements, or external validation. Even when you think of the personal titles that we often strive for, like mother, wife, husband, it's easy to tie our self-worth to these roles. But self-worth goes beyond any title. It's about who you are as a person, not just the roles that you fill. So the other day, I was reflecting on my job as a management consultant. This was maybe 11 or 12 years ago. This was my dream job, y'all. I had always envisioned myself to be a person who traveled the world consulting with different companies, and I got to stay in these big, fancy hotels. But here's the thing, real life caught up with me. I got the job, and then my dream job turned into the nightmare. My Monday through Thursday travel schedule was horrendous. Typically, I would fly out weekly on Mondays and then return home on either Thursday or Friday. And I was constantly frustrated, sad, and just stressed out. I remember one time I was on the phone with one of my mentees at the time. Shout out to Denise. And I'm going to ask her if she remembers this. And she said, Miss Candia, do you ever get lonely being in a hotel by yourself? And I felt a hole in my chest because this girl is my mentee. I'm the mentor. And on the outside, it may look like this is this big, fabulous life, but I was having several cringe-worthy moments. But anywho, there was another particular week I was en route to my client site located in Colorado, and I was on a plane, and the plane had just arrived. And I was standing and waiting in line to depart the plane, and I started thinking to myself, I should just make myself fall down the stairs just to avoid going into the office. Now listen, don't get it twisted, okay, party people? Your girl wasn't trying to meet the G-O-D, okay? The girl wasn't trying to meet her maker or end up in a leg cast. I just wanted a break from a life that didn't turn out how I thought it would. It was a moment of deep frustration and sadness. My phone reminds me of times over the years, and a few weeks ago, a selfie popped up that I took in this hotel room in Colorado. Y'all, I look beautiful, okay? My hair was done up nice, had a fresh blowout, but y'all, my eyes were so sad, and I felt completely lost and disconnected from myself at that time in my life. And the current me was staring at the past me and thinking to myself, isn't it so funny how you could look so regular, like you're indulged in a normal day in a beautiful hotel. I had a really, really nice view of the mountains in Colorado. So you saw in this picture, the background. And I thought to myself, anybody would think, oh, look at Candia, seemingly looking good, enjoying her life and her dream job. But on the inside, I was tore down, y'all. I was completely tore down emotionally. And I realized then that this constant pressure to perform, the long hours, the lack of personal time, because oftentimes we had to share a car with other consultants on your team to drive from the airport, from the hotel to the client site, and we had to have lunch together and dinner together. So I felt like I didn't even have a personal life, and it was truly taking a toll on my mental and emotional health. It was also in that moment of despair that I had a profound realization. I started to seriously think about leaving the job. And I also realized, well, Candia, girl, if you leave this job, then who are you? What you gonna be? What you gonna do? And because, of course, I'm looking at the job title and the status that comes with that job title being wrapped up in who I was as a person and my contributions to the world was all wrapped up in that job title. But here's the thing, my unhappiness wasn't their fault, meaning my employer, the people that I worked with. It was mine. I had tied my self-worth to my job title and the work I did. And in doing so, I had lost sight of who I truly was. Looking back, I gave my manager, colleagues, and clients way too much power over my happiness. What I know now is who you blame, you give your power to. So yes, I could share a laundry list of things that was wrong with that work environment, from microaggressions to no work-life balance and all the things. And I don't even believe in balance, but I can go down that laundry list. But one of the things my mom always reminds me of is nothing changes if nothing changes. And so at some point, you must stop blaming others and find the power within yourself to make a change. And ultimately, many of us push ourselves to the brink of our sanity, chasing enough, and I'm doing air quotes. Enough often looks like titles and status, but enough is elusive, unreliable, and unpredictable. We strive for the next promotion, the bigger paycheck, the prestigious title, believing these things will bring us fulfillment. But guess what? The goalposts keep moving. What was once enough quickly becomes not enough, leaving us in this perpetual state of chasing something that always seems just out of reach. And this happens for those of us who achieve those things and those of us who are striving to achieve those things. That's why you have to remind yourself that you are enough in this moment, because the things are not promised. And here's the thing, when I say many of us, I include me in the mix, okay? So just envision us at the church and we standing in front of the congregations, holding hands, confessing our sins and insecurities, okay? I am in this with you. But what happens when you achieve all those things or those things never come? Real talk, my career, even my relationship status. I felt like that I would only be enough once I had the fancy job and the husband. But you know, that's a story for another day. We're not here to talk about these crazy dating streets, okay? We're not here to talk about that right now. Well, listen, we're going to talk about it at some point, but someday, not today. Anywho, what happens when the pursuit of success leaves you burned out, disconnected, and undervalued? You wind up like me, child, sitting on a therapist's couch trying to figure out your life. But listen, I'm here to ease a little bit of your anxiety today. There is a life on the other side and it's waiting for you. But first, we have to understand how to recognize the everyday signs that we are connecting our worth to our titles and status in life. One of the biggest signs for me in a lot of ways is I found myself overworking to maintain or enhance this professional status. When your self-worth is tied to your job, every task and project becomes a high-stake endeavor. Like you feel like your life is on the line every single week. The pressure to perform perfectly leads you to feel stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and all the things. The fear of failure, because you think you have to prove yourself to be worthy of the title that you hold, can be so overwhelming, paralyzing, because and it also stifles your ability to tap into your creativity or individuality. Because here's the thing, when you focus solely on your personal or professional title, you limit yourself to a very narrow definition of happiness and or success. Because if you are a parent and joy for you is watching your child have fun, when your child grows up and they want to watch themselves have fun with their friends, what you gonna do? If you have a vision of seeing your child or children attend college and get a job and they don't do those things, what you gonna do about your joy and success? So ultimately, regardless of your husband, kids, wife, significant other, what does joy look like for you? What does happiness look like for you without the responsibilities that come with your title? Who are you without your responsibilities as a parent, as a vice president, as a manager or executive? How would you describe yourself outside of those things? Because when you are so attached to these titles and expectations, it means that you are constantly seeking external validation from other people, and that your worth is only determined when, one, you have that title, and two, performing at that perceived level of success that comes with that title. And when the recognition isn't given, your self-esteem goes down the toilet. Another sign for me that I was wrapping my self-worth and my job title was, looking back, I was in constant conflict with myself and my friends. At least 4 days a week, I was stuck in a period of unhappiness, overwhelm, resentment, all the things. I'm like, girl, we got a problem. Because next thing you know, it was affecting how I communicated, often with people that I love, often leading to misunderstandings and conflicts and some of my personal relationships. I remember at that time being in conflict with several good friends I had at that time. And looking back, I said to myself, girl, it wasn't that serious. Your ass just wasn't happy. And you was taking out your frustration, whether that frustration was due to envy because maybe they were living their life, or I don't know what it is, but I am aware enough to know that how I reacted during conflict with my friends during that point in my life was more because I was unhappy with myself. I also realized that tying my worth to professional success always meant that I was setting some unrealistic standards for myself, always feeling like I had to be perfect. And so now that I took you down memory lane, let's talk about how I overcame tying my worth to my job. First thing first, therapy. Therapy, and I talked about it before on this podcast, but therapy really helped me confront my inner critic, to learn how to have conversations with my inner critic. My therapist was the first person, I believe during our third session, I was venting or just talking regularly, and she was like, you have an inner mean girl. You know you have an inner mean girl, and she has a measuring stick, and she judges your moves all day, every day. The inner mean girl, she sets unrealistic expectations, and she judges you very harshly. Well, this is why I'm such a strong proponent of therapy. I feel like therapy is almost like the oil change that you need to get for your car every 90 or so days, right? Sometimes you can't see outside of yourself, but a therapist, like a mechanic, can catch some things that may be going on in your car that are not really obvious to you. A therapist can catch the self-sabotage, the baggage, and the trauma just by listening to how you speak about yourself, just how you speak about how you're dealing with certain situations. So just like you take your car for an oil change, go for a 60, 90 monthly checkup, okay? Your mind needs those checks and balances. The second thing that helped me overcome tying my worth to my job is meditation, to keep that inner critic, that inner mean girl in check. Meditation for me, and I meditate about 6 days a week. Meditation helps me stay focused, clear, and intentional. It allows me to make more decisions from a place of love rather than fear. Now, I have another episode, and I'll share it in the show notes, on how to recognize love-based decisions versus fear-based decisions. And these mindfulness practices of meditating, taking deep breaths, it helps me to stay grounded in the present moment, reducing the anxiety that I've often felt about future achievements or past failures, right? Again, those unrealistic expectations. Another thing that I stopped doing to disconnect who I am from my job title at the time was I stopped introducing myself by my job title. When I introduce myself, I start leading with who I am beyond work. And so typically when I introduce myself, I talk more so about the things that bring me joy, about who I am. I am a curious person. I am often committed to certain fun things like happy hours and beach days and gardening and all the things. So I typically introduce myself by the characteristics that describe who I am, my commitments for this season of my life. I also started to set some long-term goals and even short-term goals that aligned with personal values and principles rather than just career ambitions. So for me, even when I think about this year, I decided to make health and wellness lead in my goals. So typically health and wellness is often the third goal priority for me. Like, in the beginning of the year when you're looking at some of the goals that you would like to achieve, usually my career and finances are first and foremost. But this year I said, nope, I am going to lead with health and wellness. And so when I think about setting long-term goals that align with personal values, a value for me is it rooted in wellness? Are my actions, are my conversations, are the people that I surround myself with, is there a foundation of me being well? And so if I asked you who you are beyond the title of business owner, mom, manager, husband, sister, aunt, how would you define yourself? We have to stop tying our titles to our worth, because I've seen this happen time and time again, even with some of the people that I work with. Once that title is gone, we're often left with this profound feeling of emptiness of who am I? Even when you think about parents, a mother or a father, when the child leaves the house, although you're a mother forever and ever, you often feel like, wow, my kids who are now adults, they don't need me anymore. Who am I? You have that, what do they call it? Empty nest syndrome or whatever. And so the next thing that I did to stop tying my worth to my job and my work is I got really intentional about exploring and creating joyful, peaceful experiences, freedom outside of work. So hello, gardening, yoga, swimming, and running. Your girl is here for it, okay? Building an identity outside of work is so important. And for me, my identity outside of work, I have been committed to making sure that I indulge in these activities before work. And so most days, I would say at least 3 days during the week, before I sit down at this computer to record a podcast or conduct a workshop, I am being intentional about my gardening, yoga, or swimming or running before I even get started at work. So that brings me to my next point of how I stopped connecting my job title to my worth. I no longer start my days with a laundry list of things to do for work and others. Now, before I delve into this, I just want to, in fact, I had to re-edit this part because there's a bit of privilege in me saying I no longer start my days with a laundry list of things to do for other people. This wasn't always true for me. while I don't have kids, at one point I was taking care of my mom. And so I had to start my days at one point focused on caring for another person. And I have to say that even at that time, I remember one really challenging time that the family was having with my mom's health. And I decided that my start time would be 4 a.m. to prioritize me before her, because at 4 a.m. she was asleep, but the doctors weren't coming around and all the things. So that was my moment to focus on gratitude and do some things that were good for me. But I just wanted to say that with many of these tips here, I know that sometimes they come from a place of privilege, meaning depending on your situation, some things may not work for you, and that's okay. But one of these tips gonna work for you. Anywho, prioritizing my health and wellness goals over business goals has been a game changer. And so even now, I'm in the process of completing an RFP. A RFP is a request for a proposal for a pretty big client. And before I even agreed to submit this proposal, I needed to get some clarity around client expectations because this is a 2-year contract. And so I needed to be clear that if the commitment means I can no longer ease into my day, then it's a no-go for me. A few years ago, I would have been looking at the amount of money and thinking to myself, oh, considering my 6 and 7 figure money goals, this is a go for me. Now, the present candy is like, nah, it may be a no-go if we have to give up our wellness. Hence, again, going back to making decisions that are more aligned with my personal values rather than just career ambitions. Yes, the money is great, but if it doesn't align with a value or non-negotiable for me, it's a no-go. Another way that I stopped connecting my worth to my job title is I got really intentional about finding a support network, finding a community. I've always said on this podcast, confidence comes from community and relationships. And so cultivating strong personal relationships or a supportive network of people can provide you with that emotional support and a sense of belonging outside of work. So for each one of my hobbies and my wellness areas, I have a small and somewhat large network of people who I can engage with for support, or maybe I may need a question answered related to one of those areas or one of the challenges that I'm having as it relates to one of those areas. So just being connected with other people who have the same interests, who share similar passions. And listen, they may not look like you or speak like you. So what? I feel like diversity is the spice of life. Get connected and engaging with these people who are related to places or spaces that you like to play in can provide you the well-being that you need. They can also reinforce positive behaviors for yourself and also help you reframe, shift perspective about your line of thinking. Sharing this episode was important for me because I know many women who are unhappy with themselves or they believe they should be doing more in life. Some of these women are my friends. Some of these women are my clients. They're at the VP level and above. And the reality is, what more looks like is often tied to a title or someone else's standard. And as long as you continue to hold yourself accountable to someone else's standard, you leave that very person in charge of your happiness. And for one, I always ask them to clarify, what does more look like and why is that important to you? So that I can gain clarity on what truly matters for you and also offer you a shift in perspective. Like, okay, now listen, you are placing your happiness in the hands of other people. If these people do not validate this title or this direction or this thing, what are we going to do about that? First and foremost, are we prepared for that? And here's the thing. Most of us are taught to find our value, our worth in a title, whether it's a job title or relationship status, title, boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, wife, husband, whatever, grandmother. Most of us are taught this at a very early age. I even think about my nephew. He's 5, and the school asks each child to identify what they wanted to be when they grow up. And so each of them were encouraged to choose a title. And he's 5. And we're asking 5-year-olds to make that huge decision to decide what title they want to align themselves with. And so you have these 5-year-olds who are saying some pretty cool things. You know, you had some said they wanted to be a veterinarian, they wanted to be a doctor, they wanted to be a construction worker, and all of the things. And that habit starts to form at such an early age that it becomes so very hard as an adult to realize that this is what's keeping us unhappy and do the work necessary to unlearn that line of thinking, being, and doing. A few years ago, I heard this from somewhere, that instead of asking people or asking children what they want to be when they grow up, we should ask them what types of problems would they like to solve. And I actually love that, because it's not about the title per se. It's more so about the impact, and it's also the impact being able to contribute and change the lives of other people. And I also think that when we look at asking people, asking kids to focus more on the types of problems they would like to solve, it helps them to discover their strengths, their characteristics, and embrace this space of being of service to others, to really think about how they can be creative at solving some of the world's most pressing problems, or even minor frustrating problems. So let's get introspective for a moment. Think about the actions you take daily and the goals you are striving toward. Are these things deeply connected to your self-worth? What truly motivates your daily action? Is it the applause of other people? Are you driven by a genuine interest or passion, or are you seeking this external validation and approval? So for me, even when I think about the conversations that typically happen with people who work out, most people will say they love going to the gym or being in the gym. To me, I hate it. Okay, maybe hate is a strong word. But the other day, I was on Threads, and someone said, where are all my people who enjoy the gym? And there were so many people in that thread, y'all. They were like, me, showing pictures of themselves in the gym, smiling, looking at their muscles in the mirror and all the things. And I said, well, I don't like the gym, but I get it done. The liking comes later. And so for me, that personal growth and fulfillment is just tied to my movement. I decide that. Also, asking yourself, what happens when you face a setback? Do you often feel a sense of personal failure, or do you view the setback as an opportunity to learn and grow? Just last week, I had a major challenge in business with payment. And although I wanted to cry and scream and throw the computer and all the things from the hurdles that I was being put through by this specific company, I also decided that I was going to ease into this, and I was going to approach this with, what is this moment trying to teach me? How can I grow through this? And I also had to affirm myself in that moment. I have an ability to grow from this space, just as a reminder. This is just a temporary setback. Another self-reflective question to ask yourself is also about prioritizing your well-being. Are you making time for rest, hobbies, personal interests, or is your life dominated by work and professional achievements? In my one-on-one sessions, even in my group programs, I always lead with, we're not only here to talk about work. We have to fill our own cup, and then we could fill the cups of others as leaders. And lastly, what brings you joy? Are you engaging in activities that genuinely bring you joy and fulfillment, or are you neglecting them in favor of these work-related goals? So reflecting on some of these questions can help you identify points in time where where your self-worth is closely tied to your job title and your professional success. So remember, party people, we're no longer determining that our job or achievements dictates our worth. Take some time this week, journal about these questions, see what insights you uncover, okay? The journey to untangling your self-worth from your professional identity, it starts with self-awareness. Self-awareness is understanding and embracing the good, bad, and ugly of who you are and showing up anyway. All right, party people. Now listen, stay tuned for next week's episode. If this episode resonated with your spirit, share it with your people so they can share it with their people. Keep showing up and speaking up for yourself. Talk soon.